do it in. Oh, it's gone into general already. And here we are. Hello.
Hello.
It's Sam and Amy and Rose, and we're here. It's the Agile Ventures Weekly meeting. It is Wednesday. Every second Wednesday is the one that I can make it. So here I am. I guess almost force of habit wants me to go around and do a scrum with everybody, but it's not a scrum. It's a weekly meeting. But that doesn't mean that I can't ask you how you're doing. How are you doing, Amy? Anything to report?
I'm doing pretty good. My strategy of joining a boot camp to learn enough Ruby to contribute to Website 1 worked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm working on the add image URL feature, which, like most software projects, has turned out to be more complicated than anyone expected. So the latest development is that we are going to have a whitelist of image sharing sites to compare against when people say, here's my image. And so it needs a helper, just like Pivotal Tracker does, a validation helper.
So this is for Website 1, and this is for uploading and for people to allow people to upload an image for their avatar or something?
Actually, we're not even uploading. We are just pointing at an external URL.
Oh, this is an image for their project.
Yes, exactly. As a first iteration.
Sure.
I'm not sure what the barrier is against hosting yet.
Right. Well, I think that we have to pay for it. Basically, is the thing ultimately. And yeah, so it's storage. We're on a free tier of the Heroku hosting service, and if we start storing stuff, I mean, the usual solution is to store things on Amazon S3 or what have you. That's what people do. But then as more and more things, as you scale, Amazon starts deducting more and more money from your credit card, and that's
okay.
Often how that works. But just out of interest, which boot camp are you attending?
I'm done with it. It was Thinkful.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I just like their curriculum is not the best, but they are helpful in that it's an online learning community.
Right.
And so you go through the curriculum and people are familiar with the curriculum, and when you get stuck, you can get someone to get you unstuck. Right. And I generally didn't have to wait more than a few hours to get unstuck.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And how long did that course last?
Well, it's a 3 to 4 month course, but that 3 to 4 months includes a lot of really basic beginner stuff, like learning how to use Git and learning about programming, which I already knew. So I was able to blaze through most of the curriculum in about 3 weeks.
Okay. You did the Rails course, did you?
I did the Ruby on Rails course, yes.
Right. And just if it's not a terribly personal question, how much did that cost?
It was $500.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. And now you're feeling pretty comfortable with Ruby on Rails.
I've definitely leveled up. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Excellent. Anything on the? I mean, that's great development there. Anything on the Agile Ventures sort of community front? I know you have been very active in sort of reaching out to new members previously. Any developments there?
No developments. I made a commitment in an Agile Ventures weekly meeting to, send everyone greetings, and then in a couple of weeks invite them to a newbie meeting. Right. And so I made that commitment for 3 weeks, and that ended like a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
During the 3-week trial, I think it helped a little bit. I didn't see a lot of reaction.
No.
And people didn't really show up to the newbie meeting.
No.
So it didn't yield the kind of results that I was expecting. But as a practice over the long term, I think that it's a good idea, and I think that periodic newbie meetings are a good idea. Yeah. But it's fairly labor intensive. Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, it's interesting. I was just saying to somebody else. I mean, I think often we can try that. I mean, I tried introducing pair programming into the MOOC. And I was sort of, I think that was an interesting experiment. I sort of was hoping that would reap dividends in terms of lots of people being more engaged, but I didn't seem to quite work out that way. But it's
I think it's one of.
Yeah, go on.
I think it's one of the more effective efforts, though.
The pair programming.
Yeah, and the MOOC. you know,
Uh,
I think it accomplishes a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the combination of that and then what I've just been doing in the last 2 weeks is I've been mentioning Agile Ventures and that we're doing projects in my emails to the students, and that seems to have borne fruit in terms of 4 or 5 people have sort of popped up and been around. How long they stay around, we'll see. But yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
But that's great that you're kind of engaged in the website one development. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
Could
so
I
I
interject something about that?
You certainly could, Rose. I was going to
Yeah.
move on to you and just ask how things were going with
Oh,
you.
well, I don't want to cut off Amy. She might have more to say, but it occurred to me that if you're trying to set up newbie meetings, I would imagine that a lot of newbies might be students,
Mm-hmm.
and most students are, they're really busy around certain times of the semester, like now, and they have breaks, like over Christmas and in the summer, and a lot of them will be investigating. I mean, I know a lot of students that I've talked to use the summers in particular to find out about courses online or ways that they can increase their skills, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just something to think about if you do that again, would be like the timing.
Mm. Mm. Yes, yeah, I think it's difficult. I mean, I think we had various issues with time zones and different other things. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No point taken. I mean, unless Amy had more things to immediately add, but of course, then Amy can jump in at any point. I was going to say to Rose, well, I was going to applaud your efforts with your students and having your students come and attend Agile Ventures meetings, and then having Thomas up in your lectures and talking to the students about Agile Ventures. And it's been wonderful to have them involved in the last few weeks. Yeah, but how are things? I know we just had a meeting where I asked you that already, but for the other ones who weren't
Yeah.
in that meeting, yeah, how are things with you, Rose?
Good. I was just telling Amy that we had a discussion Monday during our scrum
Mm-hmm.
about the problems students were having with Postgres. Apparently, Thomas pointed us in the direction of the wiki documentation,
Mm-hmm.
and we couldn't find it.
Right.
And apparently, but then we did because he provided us Monday with a link, and
Mm.
apparently it might be your private wiki that has the instructions
I don't
because
think.
it's not
Well,
public.
I don't. I mean, all GitHub repos potentially have a wiki
Well,
associated with them. So I mean, I'm not aware of
well,
it having.
the link the link that he provided was not the link for either local support website or wiki.
Local support
And so
wiki.
we weren't sure where it was, but we're happy to have it.
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean the other place that you find documentation is in the Agile Ventures site itself, and there is like in website one, there's kind of. I can't find that list. There is sort of extensive
There's
documentation.
not.
So there's like.
Yeah, but a lot of it is outdated.
Well, I mean that's the nature of documentation. That's why we prefer tests to documentation.
Exactly. At any rate, Amy and I talked about this, and I'm good at both wikis, and based on my experience, when I have this set up, I'll make sure that the instructions are in both places.
Yes. Yes.
So that it'll be more streamlined.
Mm.
But we were talking about, nowhere does it say, for instance, what particular version of Postgres you should use. And I mean, sometimes it's just the assumption is the latest version, but sometimes there's a reason to use a particular version.
Sure. Yes. Or no. Absolutely. I'm sure that should be specified. Yes. All these things. I think. I mean, in some ways, I'm. The website. I have my. Did I share the screen there? I did. I did share the screen, but I didn't focus on it. But yeah. I mean, I have mixed feelings about all of the documents existing in Agile Ventures. In some ways, it would be, I think, valuable to standardize, for example, and just say we're exclusively using the wikis for documentation. And the problem is that. 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 with like these two sources of documents spread across the two different sites. My worry about the overall Website 1 project and the Agile Venture thing is it's got too many things in it. You know what I mean? Every additional feature that it has, kind of has a non-linear increase in the complexity of maintaining the entire project. But anyhow, yeah. But yeah, your input on trying to make things better for other people trying to get involved in the project is very, very welcome indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's my goal until the next Scrum, to make sure that that's done.
Fantastic, fantastic. Let me check in with Gail. Great to see you. How are you doing, Gail?
I
think.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes. How are you doing?
Oh, okay. I'm doing fine. Spread a little thin. I've got some interest in auto graders and, of course, in the pair programming that I told you about. In the meantime, I'm taking a look at both mean and sales.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when things get moving, I'll be ready to come along. And I'm also following the course. Sales is really cool.
Yeah. I played with that a little before. Yes. I think that would be interesting to do more things.
It's got the REST built in as well as the sockets I/O.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, we're starting to do a lot more Node here at Makers Academy. There is a shift from Rails towards the Node stack. Yes, good stuff. Well, I guess I sort of promised, a kind of overview of the Autograders project. I'm happy to chat about other things, but I'm also very happy to give you guys my perspective on where the Autograder project is. Is that something people are interested in right now, or is there anything else we'd like to chat about?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I haven't particularly prepared for this. I'll kind of try and give you the overview. I mean, it actually comes down in here as being the first project that was actually created in this new site. It's not the oldest project in Agile Ventures. Local support is the oldest project. But Thomas has joined us. Hey, Thomas. So Autograders, basically, I got involved in helping Armando Fox and David Patterson with their MOOC. And one of the big features of that massive open online class is the Autograders that I know Rose gets to have daily fun with, those Autograders. I think perhaps that maybe Amy hasn't experienced the Autograders, having not done the MOOC. Thomas has, I'm sure Gail has as well. I guess in particular for Amy's benefit, and also for the recording, I guess the thing to do is let's go and have a look at the edX MOOC here. So this is the current class, and we have, in the class, there's a series of materials, I think probably not dissimilar to the ones that you might have got from Thinkful, Amy, that take you through learning how to do Git and then Ruby and so on and so forth. This was the class that's been running over, I think we're now into week 3, so I just released, week 4, yes. So we've just released week 4, which is all about the Agile methodology and behavior-driven design. And we've got an example of an autograder here, or rather, at least, so we have, as well as all the materials and the video materials and so on, is we've got these homeworks. And you can see my embedded instructions on how to deal with the homeworks and my request for people to submit pairing videos on the homeworks. And then what we have at the end of each homework section, and they're an assignment, is we have this ability to choose a file. And I think I've got, actually this is the one I was just testing last night, so I've got the example solution for that. I then click check here, and this code, I've got that was a tar GZ, a kind of an archive of the code that has been worked on for this particular behavior-driven development and Cucumber assignment here, which is a relatively complex assignment. And I've got a diagram which I can probably get to. I think I've got in the old beta starters site, which sort of explains what's happening behind the scenes. So now where is it? There, autograders. There we go. Yes, and that's a bit small, so we'll make that a bit bigger. So what happens in the, I don't know how well you can see that, but so this thing at the bottom here where it says student with browser, that's me, that's the experience from the student, and which here is not a very good experience for the student, which is unfortunate. I wonder if I've pulled that into the right. So which homework is that? Oh, is that homework 4? Oops. Yes, that's why. So this is the kind of experience you have if you upload the incorrect homework. Obviously, that was entirely my plan. If you go to a different page where you want to update the correct homework, I mean, this is right. That was the one I was uploading last night. I mean, you can see sort of one I prepared earlier, like there. This is the result that we're going to get back once we've checked it. But it takes about, probably not more than 30 seconds for that to come back with a response. If I so while that's running, if we go back here, so we have a student with the browser. So the student uses the edX interface to submit a solution to edX, which is a Django. The edX is an open source learning management system. They have it's all Python and Django servers and so on, and they have the concept of a queue, and so they have queues with different names, and students from a particular course, and of course they support multiple courses. The student's solution, basically it's stored in Amazon in S3, and then a link to it is kind of made available on that queue. Now the autograders themselves, the software project that we have that sits here we've got, I think this is in the SaaS book RAG repo, that stands for Ruby Autograder. This code base here that actually it pulls data off the queues. So if we go back to the diagram here, it's running on an EC2 instance that Berkeley plays for, and it basically sleeps for 30 seconds, and then it polls the edX, whatever I assume the queues are in, some form of Python or Django or what have you, and says, do you have any more submissions for students on homework? Actually on any homeworks, yeah. Basically, all of the homeworks are lumped together in that queue, and it basically says, do you have any homeworks for me? And so then, and I guess I can go, I mean, there's basically a code base that was, originally developed by Commander Fox and developed with his TAs at UC Berkeley, which I kind of inherited, and I spent a good portion of a year working with various people, as part of Agile Ventures, trying to improve that. Myself and Paul spent a lot of time on it. We got a number of new features in there that improved it. We made it a bit more flexible in terms of the final deadlines that it did. But it's a pure Ruby project, and I guess the key component of it, if I look in here, we've got our edX client. Yeah, this is the one. This is the one. It's also the one that's got the nastiest code in it, I think. It's got run at each submission, load spec. Yeah, so we'll make that. I mean, not that I'm expecting anybody to necessarily read this code, but I show this partly so that you can get a sense of the complex, kind of almost the messiness of the code. So this is the portion of the code, the edX client, that is basically trying to repeatedly poll the edX server. So that's sort of doing this Django authorization and so on. It's going in there, and it basically here it's got this main loop here, which is when it gets a submission, it then forks off a separate sub-process to try and run a series of tests on that, in a sort of a sandbox that the student has submitted that code, and it's going to run tests on their code. So there's that kind of main thing there, and that's then a sort of a separate portion of the project is just how to grade the assignment. There's a series of related repos that Paul and I had split out. So, like for example, here for the Ruby calisthenics homework, we have this is actually the homework. For example, that the students are offered, and then we have a continuous integration homework that's not necessarily available to everybody. I'm just going to mute Rose there, and this contains the specifications. It just contains, if we're going to have a look at it, the autograder. There we go. So, for example, these are the full specifications, that the specs that will be run against, for example, a student who submitted a solution to this dessert problem. These specs will then be run against that in the sub-process that's been handed out by this Ruby autograder. But so, for example, that's, as I say, one part of it is that you can actually run those things independently. You can just run the specs. You can run this sub-process. Starts off a completely independent process. There's effectively two code bases in here. There's one which is all about this diagram that I have here, which is talking to edX and getting code from the student off the queues, off the homework queues. And then there's the separate process, which is like, okay, let us take the specifications of the homework and run that against the student's homework. So there's two big pieces of the puzzle. I guess I won't. But you can see how here we've ended up, for example, that each submission that we're yielding to above, we've got code like this. And I think basically, like, for example, this code is all now not being used at all. It's basically just ignored, and then this is the main loop where it's trying to authenticate with edX and get stuff back. And you can see that this code is, it's not following the design principles that we like to see. It's not methods that have, a small number of lines. It's very, very messy. It feels like it's a big job to come in here and sort of make any changes to the fundamental way in which the system operates, although we have made minor changes. Like, for example, we came in and I think the stuff that it does with generating, here, we managed to adjust it so that it would automatically reload changes from the configuration file to make it easier to update the the deadlines and this and that without having to restart the entire system. So complex piece of work. Just to finish the flow. So once the separate subprocess is running on this EC2 instance, once that's finished, it sort of generates a bit of like a JavaScript object notation, which includes the student's score, some other bits and pieces of information, I think a unique ID, and so on. And that's passed back to the edX queue, which then ultimately comes back and updates the browser. And these results here of actually that you might otherwise expect to see on the command line are presented back here to the student, and the student can then kind of try and figure out from this information, did I submit the homework correctly or not? And they then sort of kind of rinse and repeat, so to speak. So that's kind of like an overview of the architecture of the Autograders project. Does that make any sense? Does any questions so far?
A little bit. Yeah, I have a question. I can see how this would work for Ruby homework, RB files, but some of the homeworks we submitted were websites, which I think we posted to Heroku. Are the tests for the grading for that also processed through the same loop?
They are, but they're run, there's these different kinds of, there's a whole series of different kinds of homework. So, for example, we have the RSpec grader has, for example, here there's a Heroku grader. So what that does is that will, it's pretty straightforward here. It just basically takes your Heroku URI that you've submitted when you're saying I'm submitting this is my deployed Heroku app, and then the specifications for that. If we go and look at SARSbook, I think we've got Rails intro CI. Actually, it also has specs. But so what they do here is that they use Mechanize then to talk to over the wire. They talk to the Heroku instance and they check, does it behave superficially, as I interact with it through the browser, does it behave in the correct fashion? So that's how that's graded. But the principle here.
What do you mean interact with it through the browser?
Well, when I say interact with it through a browser, it's not a real browser. There's a library. There's a mechanized gem, which basically can open a network socket, and it automates Ruby interaction, a bit like Capybara does.
Like you're just sending requests and responses and seeing,
yeah. So
getting what you want?
Yeah, it sends a request, it gets the HTML back. You can then say, I want to click on this button. I mean, basically, have you used Capybara much?
Oh, I did, right. That's the BDD.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Capybara is sort of, I mean, in some ways, it seems to me that Capybara and Mechanize are not so different, really. And actually, Capybara is probably easier to use than Mechanize. But I think this is, yeah, Capybara seems to be used much more in the context of doing tests, whereas Mechanize was, I think, maybe around earlier and is sort of designed specifically with just the idea of mechanizing interaction with websites.
Now, this stuff doesn't, if I remember my course correctly, this stuff doesn't work with JavaScript. Is that correct?
I think you can make it work with JavaScript. It doesn't always, but you need to make special account of, you know, you need to set it up to make sure that it does work with JavaScript.
Okay. And so is there work to do on autograders? Ruby and Rails are not my strong suits.
Sure. Yeah, well, there's work to do on autograders in that there's certainly, so for example, Rose is a client of autograders in that, you know, she's using a Spock clone of the MOOC. And so I think there's various, I need to see if I can restore precisely the things that I need in order to get, that's the local support pivotal tracker. That will, no, just restore that. Oh, we'll go away. Let's go, oh, there it is. It's, what do I say? So I think that there's a lot of things that we would like to change. Now, if I can choose the right thing to sign in with. Here we go. Is that the right one? Okay, there we go. So we've got the, where's the autograders over here? I mean, the main thing that we were trying to do was we were trying to make it possible to develop by introducing continuous integration and sort of having sort of reliable tests wrapped around the entire system. So I mean, this is the pivotal tracker for autograders, and let's see here. I mean, the point that we got to, we'd added various continuous integration that sort of tested it, and I think our objective, myself and Paul, who was very involved and is now not so much involved, I think he's been burnt out by the whole thing. We wanted to try and get continuous integration wrapped around it, so that whenever, you know, we made changes to any kind of, like, we've got the Rails intro CI here, so that if somebody made changes to the specifications for how the Rails intro CI was graded, that, you see, we have a Travis file there, and there's a build, and so basically it would, if you pushed up some change into here, the continuous integration would run, and it would check, does this grade correctly? And we were trying to get that all in place so that we could start to take apart the grader to kind of refactor the mess that was inside, if you know what I mean. So I think we got quite far into doing that, and we've now got these separate repos. You know, the latest versions of the course, you know, all refer students to repos like this. I think there's lots of different features in here or what have you. I mean, Armando's also a client, but like his level of involvement goes up and down. I would say that if you personally were interested in getting involved, did you submitted a pull request on Ruby Intro? Was that correct, or no? Or was it Ruby Calisthenics?
Calisthenics. Yeah, I just
Yeah. So, for example, we've got Ruby Calisthenics there. You had some changes there. Like, this is an improvement. This is to make the test a bit tougher, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, the test let you do something that wasn't correct.
Yeah. Right. So it makes the test tougher, as in more rigorous. It excludes one of the things that you might do that would not be correct.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess here it was checking that each of the things. Right. So it wasn't checking here.
But that was a test. That wasn't an autograder test. That was a test within was given to us in the homework.
But that would also be run. All of those tests are also run as part of it.
Yeah.
So we've got, for example, here we've got Ruby Calisthenics CI here, and then we've got the, hello Michael, we've got the autograder there, and so which spec was I just looking at before? We were just looking at the pull requests. It's in which file? It's in
anagrams.
Right,
maybe?
fun with strings there. Yeah, anagrams. Yes, right. So if we go and look at over here the CI, and we go into the autograder, so fun with strings. So, oh, let me just give me a second and say, see you tomorrow. Is it? See you tomorrow. Yeah. Thanks, dude. Bye. See you then. Sorry. So yeah. So I'm presuming here. I'm not seeing fun with strings. That's fun with strings. Anagrams. Anagram grouping. Yeah. So like, I think it's probably here. This is you were adding things. So that's the fun with strings spec there. So what we would ideally have, you know, in combination with your pull request to Ruby Calisthenics, is a similar pull request to Ruby Calisthenics CI. So the autograder also ran, you know, with the rigor of, you know, what we gave to the students, and then ideally we would be deploying. Ideally, we would be deploying that to the autograder on EC2, so that in future, when students submit their homeworks through, you know, this interface, that it will be tested in that fashion. I mean, there's lots of. I mean, Armando has this idea, which I think would be awesome. See, one of the things that's problematic at the moment is that all of the configuration for the autograder resides on these EC2 instances. So if professors like Rose want to change anything to how it's graded or this, that, and the other, they basically have to ask me to do it. Whereas what Armando had proposed, which I thought was a good idea, is that here I'm using edX Studio to kind of show us the XML description of problems that edX uses in order to present these, you know, boxes and things to the students. And so you can see here we have a queue name here, which said this is the name of the queue that the you know, edX will make that a homework submitted to available to there. And we're going to come back. Here it goes. And then this is going to be the ID of the homework. So there's a configuration on the autograder that will say, okay, if I'm going to grade this thing, okay, these are the specs that I should use. This what I want to have a good example about someone anyway. But so what Armando had been proposing was putting in here JSON, so you could specify. You could say, I would like this homework graded against this RSpec thing, and that would allow, for example, Rose would come up with her own RSpec thing in a repo and say, this is a, you know, she could come up with her own assignment, right? And she could sort of design in here, here's an RSpec that I want my students' code graded against, and it could involve anything that it wanted, and the grader on the back end would just, you know, as well as receiving the student's assignment, it would receive kind of a pointer to say, this is what you should grade it against, and then the whole system would kind of be completely flexible, and we wouldn't have to rely upon massive work and configuration on the back end. That's in some ways, that would be the holy grail of what we want to move towards. That said, that's a very, very complex, large-scale thing, and if you wanted to get involved, I could easily give you access to this Ruby Calisthenics CI repo, and you could start, you're just seeing if that you could get that working and make sure that the
you put my test in there.
Yeah, you could. I could get you access in here. This is a private repo, so I could let you see it. You could put the same pull request in here. I could merge that in. We would see that it all worked there. By having it in there, we could, you know, similarly merge it into the Ruby Calisthenics, and then the next stage would be actually deploying this onto the. I mean, it'll be a spring. I mean, you know, there's a bit of time. I mean, there's a whole separate thing of, in order to deploy this stuff, one then needs access to boxes in the cloud. So I've got, if I do SSH, what do I have? edX. Do I remember the names of them? AWS. Is it AWS edX Spring 14 or something? There we go. So I think this is the production grader. So in order to actually do a deployment and change things, I have to come in here. This is like the grader. So it's Ubuntu blocks in the cloud. And so if I come in, I can have a look in here, and we can say, like, if I look rag config autograders YAML, this is the configuration that's currently hard coded, in with a YAML file in the cloud. And so you can see here, this is the queue that it's pulling off. Mm-hmm. So that has to match the one that's in here. Okay. And then it's got, this is at the moment, these URIs for these specs. This is basically, we have to have at the moment the spec
hard coded.
Yeah, hard coded, and it also has to exist on this. Like, so here, this is like in homework there.
Oh, okay.
So and then it has a due date and a type and stuff and other. And this code here has to match this code there. But so, for example, if I then look at, we can look at more homework Ruby intro there. So this spec actually has to exist here, and that is what it gets graded against. But so, as I was saying there, the dream is sort of to have, this is not specified here, that, like, in fact, all of these things would be specified here in this XML, mm-hmm. and then this would operate so that it would basically go and get the necessary specs and then just run it for you. And that would make, I think, Rose's life and the many other instructors who are using this much easier. But yeah, so here we use screen, so there's kind of, this is actually the grader running. We can see some errors there going on in the background as something has not worked. But we run screen here to keep the process running ongoing. It's there, it's crashed, it's restarted itself, against that queue. But so but basically on the, can I run tree here? I probably don't want to do that. Yeah, let's just do ls. But so we've got, basically we have our Ruby autograder stored here. We have some other special directories to allow. We've got some like half-formed Rails directories, like so when students, sometimes they submit like a tar file which contains part of a Rails app. We then insert that temporarily into, we take like a copy of this and put it in temp, and then we kind of run that whole thing. But so we've got our homework directory with those things and the rag directory. I mean, the logical follow-on from, for example, I give you access to this, we make some changes to there, is we could then try deploying a grader in the first instance where, rather than using this, because we've got this other, we've got this Taskbook homework, so this contains, like, Armando consolidated all of the homeworks and the things, and I think that this just makes for, see, even for putting continuous integration in here, having 12 different kind of homeworks in here is an absolute nightmare, which is why we split them out into separate ones to try and make the development process a bit easier. But so what we would do is, the sort of, I'd say, make a change, fix it in here, and then go about the business of replacing this with, rather than pointing to this homework directory, we'd have Ruby Calisthenics CI checked out here on the, in the EC2, and then so the grader would be referring to this one as opposed to this old legacy homework one, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so if I wanted to make the pull request, I'd go through the same process of cloning the project and making the changes and putting up the pull request?
You would. I mean, you'd also want to try and run this and try and get the CI running for you locally. But the particular thing is that this is a private repo. But so in principle, what I could do is, if you were interested in doing that, I could add you to this AutoGraders dev team here.
Okay.
And then you would have access to these repositories, so including the Ruby Calisthenics CI. Is that something you're interested in?
Yeah, particularly if you're not going to be moving quickly with the other, with the pair programming tool.
Oh, the pair programming tool. Yeah, I mean, that's something I'd love to see created. Yes, so, as I mentioned maybe the other day, the maker students here who are kind of, that seems to be a side project for them at the moment. It hasn't become their main project at the moment. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, is this you, Gail Steiger? Is this your? I've got like a little icon here.
I'm Gail Steiger. Yeah.
Yeah, and your icon there is a kind of South Park character. I mean, hey, my icon is a South Park character on GitHub. All the best people have. There we go, and then. I get my password right, welcome to the team. So if you go to github.com/sourcebook, then you will find, there'll be a button for you to click to accept the invitation, and then you should be able to see a number of additional.
Okay. Well, I'll start to, in my free time, or I'll try to get a little oriented to it. My major experience for the last 6 years or so has been almost exclusively client, but I can certainly, bring in what I did on the other repo and bring it into here, and then see, because it's interesting to me content-wise.
Yeah.
Less than technologically wise, though. I think Ruby's real nice.
Yeah.
So I'll
have a play around, have a look, and have a see. I mean, I think it's, as I've said to many people before, I mean, I think Autograders is our most complex legacy project in Agile. Yeah. It's not necessarily very, various people have in the past tried to get started with it and had trouble because it is, it's not like an out-of-the-box Ruby on Rails thing. It's quite complex, but it is a very interesting challenge, this kind of, grading students' assignments. I mean, I sort of feel that the architecture for this is kind of a bit crazy in that I don't know that there's really much advantage in running the graders on the cloud. It seems to me that the students should be able to run the full suite of tests on their local machine and then just, have the solution submitted. But Armando seems to think that's somehow less secure or less reliable. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So we sort of disagree there. But it's a very, I mean, it's predicated on the idea that for security reasons, we need to grade all these things in the cloud and we need to do it scalably. I think in principle, this was the idea that the changes that we've made, that Paul and I had made, and largely Paul had done great work on it, and it's a big loss for him not to be involved in it. But I think he was sort of working on it by himself, and he didn't have. It's a shame, if we could have had you and him together at the same time, that would have been fantastic. But yeah, by breaking it up into smaller repositories, we can kind of divide and conquer, and it may be a bit easier for you to get involved in the project now that we've done this. But we'll see.
Okay, and we're talking mostly about programming. You're not talking about setting up like a specific test or anything like that, because that could also be interesting. Like,
I'm not sure what you mean. Talking about
writing a test for an assignment or something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's certainly something that people like Rose and others are very interested in. So, I mean, if you want to come to, we do have the Autograder client meeting is every Wednesday at 5 p.m. UTC. So if you're free at that time, I mean it's advertised on Agile Ventures. Feel free to turn up there, and you'll meet instructors from around the world who will these materials.
I went to one without a mic, and I'll try to do that. It was very interesting.
Yeah, cool, good stuff. Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of run out of time for the meeting. That seems to have. I mean, I think I've kind of managed to describe, the big portion of Autograders. I don't know. I guess the Oslo Scrum has started now. I was going to be meeting Thomas and Brian to talk about the website one, but Brian's just messaged me to say, can we meet up at 8:30? And Thomas just dropped off the call. So is there? I mean, I probably should go and have a bit of a break now. Is there? Michael's joined us. He wasn't at the beginning. Any burning business that can't wait till a future Scrum or weekly meeting?
All right. Well, thank you. It was very lovely talking to everyone. And
I'll see you, Gail. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. How are you doing, Michael? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Let me see. So you don't want to open a ticket, or?
Well, no, I could do. I mean, and actually now that I have.
Because I'm actually I'll probably be around tomorrow morning, but not.
If you're I can probably do that now. I thought I was going to be going straight from this meeting into a meeting with Thomas. It seems like I'm not immediately doing that. So yeah, I can maybe do that. If you won't have time to do it till tomorrow. I worry that I will not do the justice to the problem. But I'll probably copy and paste your description of it to me into them. Yeah,
You understand what the problem is, right?
I do understand it approximately in rough essence. I'm not finding myself. I've had a very long day. I'm not finding myself following precisely the issues behind it, but I think I will post the stuff into a ticket in some form, and yeah, I mean, I would, as I say, all I would be doing, I think, at my current level of functioning is pasting in what you've described to me, without necessarily feeling very confident that I'm doing justice to the description of the error. So if you've got 2 minutes to open a ticket, then that's fine. If you haven't, I think I probably could do that in the next few minutes.
Okay.
Cool. Rose, you still there?
Hi.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's meeting wrapping up. Any final business there?
Sounds good to me. I just wanted to hear all of it.
Yeah. I think you've heard bits and pieces of that autograders thing before. Did that all make sense and fit in with your understanding of how things worked?
Yeah, but one of the things that occurred to me, actually, which I did want to ask you, is sometimes I have trouble finding the recordings for these afterwards, because sometimes it's good to go over the fine points.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea is that Agile Ventures is supposed to make that easier for you. Anything where I've hosted, if you go to my account on Agile Ventures, and you can find me in the members, you should see all of the videos from me recently. Whether that actually works or not is another matter. But that looks like, that's today. That's all of today's videos. My 2 scrums and my computer stuff.
Fantastic.
Yeah, okay. And so they're supposed to appear in other places related to projects and things. But so the video for this thing should appear here. Before too long. All right.
Okay, great. Yeah, Fabrizio and I talked about the break, which is, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks from now, it'll start.
Yeah.
Of getting involved in autograders.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I feel ultimately, maybe I need to hand it over. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
Well, many hands make light work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I think I'm certainly happy to kind of coordinate autograders through scrums, and that's what I was sort of doing with Paul really before. I just didn't have time to pair with him, and that was, I think, partly why he kind of wandered off. But yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I've worked with Paul before, and I don't know, maybe I can draw him back in.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think that's the thing, is if there was a big, it's frustrating in terms of Agile Ventures, in that I think, if we'd had bigger critical mass early, then there's certainly, it's all about, I think, if there's a sufficient number of people involved, then it's exciting for everybody. Of course, then once you have multiple projects, and then if you have 10 people split over 10 projects, then nobody's pairing with each other. So it's
of course,
it's an interesting phenomenon. Anyway, I better get on. I'll catch you guys on the morrow. Have fun.
Yes, you too.
Time zones.
You too.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Thanks so much.
Bye for now.